Hello, and welcome to Navigate Autism with Jane Lynn. I'm your host, Jane Lynn Britton. Today we have an exciting and fun show for you. We all know how important communication is to our social skills and how important proper nutrition is to our health and well-being. Today's guest is going to share with us how she combines both with an emphasis on the most important first step, feeding and swallowing. She has a lot of information to share, as well as many great, simple but practical tips and techniques that you can do today with your child. Nancy Calamusa is well known for her dynamic approach to the treatment of pediatric feeding and swallowing disorders. She has extensive knowledge and nearly 25 years experience in the field of pediatric feeding and swallowing disorders, encompassing a wide variety of settings. Nancy was responsible for instituting outpatient and inpatient pediatric feeding and swallowing therapy programs at the Bristol Myers Squibb Children's Hospital, New Brunswick, New Jersey. She was instrumental in establishing programs for the neonatal intensive care unit, pediatric intensive care unit, and the pediatric oncology unit. Following her tenure at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital, she founded New Jersey Pediatric Feeding Associates to offer quality feeding and swallowing therapy to the pediatric population. Her unique approach recognizes the individual needs of the child and family, and how effective diagnosis and therapeutic intervention will be the building blocks to success. She provides in-depth assessment of all aspects of feeding, swallowing, and mealtime, resulting in a specifically designed treatment program addressing the special needs for that family and child. Nancy received her BA degree in Communication Disorders at Douglas College, Rutgers University. She was awarded the degree of Master of Arts in Speech Pathology from Kean University, where she was awarded a graduate assistantship. And Nancy, there are so many other things I would love to tell about your background. It's so extensive, but we'll end it there for now, and I just want to thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so inspired by your show, and I think we can offer the parents and maybe perhaps some professionals some little insight as to what we do and the services that we offer.
Absolutely. I totally agree, and I'm so glad that you're excited in the same way with the same passion. That's what really led me to you. We first spoke, and I could tell in your voice, your passion, your excitement, and already you were giving me ideas on the phone. I said, we definitely have to have Nancy on this show so we can share more with the world. I know you already have quite an extensive reach, but I'm so excited to share more with the world what you do.
Great.
I'd like to start with a question.
Sure.
I just talked about your background and how you have a degree in speech pathology. And I was wondering what led you to specialize or even become interested in the feeding and swallowing part?
So about 30 years ago, when I graduated from Kean with my master's, I actually was hired by the state of New Jersey to work as a speech therapist for a state institution. Following a couple of months in that position, I realized that I really wasn't passionate about speech therapy per se. I needed more of the medical drive, more of that research, those skills that I've gotten from Rutgers and really finding out why things occurred. Luckily, my employment choices led me to a hospital where I met a neonatologist who had essentially inspired me to go down this path. He had babies that were in his units, in his NICUs, and in his step-down units that were sort of just waiting to gain skills so they can go home. There was nobody actually doing any active intervention. So together we collaborated and we started to come up with a plan and started to institute it in his hospital, and it worked. So that gave me the drive and the ambition and the passion to do more research. Remember, the internet wasn't there 30 years ago. So it meant that I was constantly in libraries and medical facilities trying to do this research. And then fast forward 2 years, I had my own son who was born premature and had feeding and swallowing issues, in addition to reflux and all the medical litany that comes along with a baby being born premature.
How ironic, or really, like, how perfect.
The cobbler with the shoe, right?
Yes,
So
well, that just gave you more passion and more
Absolutely.
interest to figure this out now, and you could live it.
Right.
You could see it, you could mold it and change it. I'm guessing
Absolutely.
how you could help other kids.
And that's what gives me the unique perspective, because there's so many therapists out here who are skilled, they're well trained, but I have that unique perspective because not only am I skilled and trained in this, but I also have the personal perspective. I know what it's like as a parent to see your child struggling with feeding and swallowing, or struggling with these medical conditions that are difficult to overcome. So for me, I think that gives me a little bit more in tune with our families and our patients, because I can empathize with them and what they're going through.
Absolutely. Well, you talk a lot about I call it a holistic approach, but it's really the family, the parent and the child, the whole relationship working together. And now I understand better why you do that, because you lived it and you bring
Right.
that experience to the family. And you just made this statement, and I know that you know how powerful this is, but other people really don't, which is you have that direct related experience, and you know what it's like as a parent, because we often go to therapists who are wonderful, they're so loving and talented and kind, but when they leave and go home at the end of the day, they don't have the same challenges and responsibilities of carrying this forward.
You're absolutely
And you
right.
do.
Yes.
So what a blessing you are. The families in New Jersey, and we're going to talk later about how you extend beyond New Jersey, but tell me a little bit about the connection with effective feeding and swallowing with communication, with speaking, with language. Is there a connection, and what is it?
Well, it's interesting. As a researcher, and I'm constantly researching, whether it's in online, whether it's textbooks, international data, I'm always looking for what is the newest information out there. And luckily, I have done research on this to make sure that we're not missing anything with our own population and the kids that we see. Unfortunately, there is not one study that sort of connects the two together. However, we have different researchers who came out with different points of view. One was a doctor in Mass General, Dr. Ashland, who said that there is no causal relationship, that feeding exists on its own, and that it doesn't do anything to prompt speech, per se. Where Dr. Suzanne Evan Morris, who is a well-respected and world-renowned therapist in our circles, came out and said that, in fact, there is, because if you think about the oral control or the neural drive necessary for your muscles to work for feeding and swallowing, they're the same muscles that are required to work for articulation and sound production. So therefore, there has to be a causal factor or a causal relationship. If we can't get the children to eat efficiently or effectively, then there may be some sort of precipitation for a speech and language deficit later on.
Well, that was just my kind of assumption, so I was curious as to hear what you found, because I know with my son, he has apraxia and other things, and whenever we stimulate the mouth area, or he does, he eats better and speaks better. So I figured there must have been some kind of correlation, and
Absolutely.
was curious for your input on that.
You know that if you stimulate those areas, that neural connection then helps to make those muscles work efficiently. And we know through repetition, doing that over and over again, that just helps connect everything together. So in fact, what you're seeing is sort of like, the anecdotal information. Yes,
Right.
You do these exercises and you give them something that is more foundational. So you work with speech or you work with feeding, and those connections continue to happen. Those pathways continue to be made to those areas.
I love that. So I'm curious now, if you don't mind, as you're talking, and I'm feeling your excitement and wanting to learn a little bit of how you work with a family. You talked about this kind of holistic approach and how you take a child and assess them and just if you can maybe even give us an example of a current child you're working with and how that works. So if I were to come in with William, what would my process be, and how have you seen something similar with someone you're working with?
Sure. So for us, our basis for securing an appointment or for us to even have any interaction is that we need your medical history. We find that we look at the medical history perhaps a little more intricately than other facilities do, because we are starting to connect the dots from the beginning. So we want to see what your prenatal history was. We want to know what his birth history was. We want to know, were there anything that any medical hiccups or any type of diagnoses that maybe were missed or maybe couldn't be attributed to what's going on with William today. So our basis is to be investigators and to make sure that we can actually paint a picture of him without having met him yet. Do we know what's actually happening here? So that when he does come in, we're able to sit and have sort of that behind the scene knowledge and know how we're going to direct that evaluation.
Okay.
Too often we find that in a lot of these facilities or clinics, they'll bring the children in for an evaluation and they barely know anything about the children, and they do this basic evaluation, oral motor evaluation, they present some foods, they give you some recommendations, and you're on your way. However, with us at NJPFA, we actually have the parents present because we feel that you being in the situation with us only allows us to educate and present or demonstrate those techniques that we would like to see you carry through at home. A lot of the facilities don't allow the parents to be in the room. They find them to be distractions. So
I know that I'm a distraction for William.
which is okay.
He doesn't usually show up in the way that he normally would at home. So that's our concern. But you have ways to get around that.
Exactly. So during an evaluation, we need to have the information, all of it. We need to see what happens in the presence of difficulties. We can't have him be on point for the evaluation.
That's true.
And then you go home and here is this behavioral dynamic that occurs because it's now you presenting it. So we do it and then we have you do it. So we can see where the breakdown on the process occurs, and then we try to alter that so it's better.
So you actually observe the parent feeding the child and then give feedback and kind of, I guess, make tweaks along the way.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. And I'm sure that has a much, I guess, more effective outcome for the child because you're getting this ongoing feedback. Is that an ongoing process or just in the initial?
Every therapy session, we have the parents there. We start out the session where we're offering and we're sort of guiding the challenges for the child, the demands of what therapy actually would be. And then we incorporate you into it, whether you're sitting next to us and helping us to present those foods, or whether you are the one who is guiding it and we step away. Most of the time, we have cameras in every room where parents can also watch via iPad. So we will take the iPad and we'll step out of the room and we can speak to you over the actual cameras so we can help guide you if things start to break down. So we find all of the technology also helps because then we can also do that at home. Now the child is used to this sort of guided situation. So if you're at home and you're like, I'm having a complete breakdown, we can Skype or FaceTime and I can do the same thing that we do in the office to help you get through it. And the children respond better.
Wonderful. That's amazing. I know that it reminds me a little bit about when we homeschooled my son. We did a lot of videotaping and feedback of myself as well as other people working with him. And we saw the largest growth in his progress when we did that because you're able to keep on top of it.
Right, absolutely.
And to kind of like in the moment make those changes. And
that's so important, right? So if you come into me with a log or a communication book that says, you know, on Thursday this is what happened, how should we have addressed it? At that point, it's kind of lost its moment or its momentum, and it's hard for us to either recreate it or is it going to habituate into this pattern that has now been set up? So if we're there, we can get right to the moment, we can help you while it's occurring or 3 days before you're due back, that's going to be essential in making progress.
Yes. So you don't have to wait.
Exactly.
I love that. How many times did something happened in the moment, and then that's when we need the help. So you're really there.
Really, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but one of the biggest things that we pride ourselves on at NJPFA is that it's constant communication, 24 hours a day. So our families get our cell phone numbers, they have our email addresses, because we feel that if we've taken you on as a patient, if you're part of our family, then we have to be part of your family. So if things start to break down, you know, shooting a simple text and saying, listen, we're having such a hard time, absolutely refusing to take fluid from the cup, what should we do? Of course we need to know that. We don't want the child to dehydrate based on a recommendation that we made. So we will alter, we'll give them steps to sort of pare them back down to where they were accepting and make that an easier, you know, situation for them, which I think is critical.
I think that you really created an amazing process, and I'm realizing how important it was that your son had these issues, because you know.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what it's like, and you know what parents need, and therefore you're meeting their needs in a way that I've not heard any other therapist or organization do.
Unfortunately, when a family goes through this or has a child that has either special needs or is going through some sort of disorder or dysfunction, we all know that there's so many people who want to offer their opinions, their guidance, you know, grandmas, neighbors, friends, everybody can cure your child. But we know that if you don't have a hand to hold who's actually guiding you through this, that process becomes sort of broken. So that's what my basis or my vision was when I opened New Jersey Pediatric Feeding, was to make sure that I was always available, that my therapists are always there for you.
So before we started, you were telling me about this little girl named Grace.
Yes, Grace.
I would love to hear more about her and what her challenges are or were, and what you've done to help her.
Well, Grace came to me at the age of 10. And to no fault of her parents or anyone in Grace's world, they had been everywhere. They had been to every hospital, every specialized program that involved feeding and swallowing, and nothing seemed to work for her. There were small gains, but nothing that was monumental in sort of changing the way that Grace was responding to food. So when I met Grace, she's nonverbal, severely autistic, aggressive, was drinking a gallon of milk via bottle, and was subsisting on Gerber custard, some very, very soft pastina, and that was her diet at 10.
That's all she would
consume.
Wow.
For her, that was the only thing that she would eat willingly, and would eat a volume that would sort of sustain her, right? So when I met her, she was completely underweight. Undernourished. She was basically translucent. She was very pale. So the first thing we wanted to do with this family was obviously get her on a more normal developmental path. And in order to do that, we had to take away the bottle. But how do you do that when that's the only thing or the only vessel that she was drinking from? So we worked with Mom on a program of slowly introducing a cup, more of like a sippy cup, because we didn't want to take away the sort of that what she was receiving from that suckling pattern she was doing upon the bottle. So we gave her a sippy cup, and we started slowly adding the milk to that, and started getting her to do 2 sips, and then she could have her bottle, then 3 sips. And it took a long time because she had habituated into this pattern for 10 years.
Right.
So eventually, months, we had gotten her off the bottle completely. And at the same time, we had transitioned her from milk to almond milk, because we found that her gut was just becoming destroyed by all of this dairy. So the behaviors were escalating even further with this overload of the milk.
Okay, and you saw that change with the almond milk?
So when we gave her the almond milk, it kind of pared down, but at the same time, remember, now we're doing more demands. So that behavior, of course, was going to go and escalate. So basically, without getting long and convoluted, well, we brought Grace in for what we call an intensive therapy block. And we saw Grace for 2 weeks during a summer break in her schooling, and we saw her 3 times a day for 2 weeks straight. So we were there for meal, snack, meal, so that we could present her with the consistencies and the textures that we knew that she might be able to gravitate towards and be successful with. So again, she comes in, she's only eating custard, she's eating some pastina, and she's now drinking almond milk from the sippy cup. Following the 2 weeks, Grace not only was eating pasta, she was eating pasta with 2 different kinds of sauces, Alfredo and red sauce, which we all know that color change for children with autism is a big deal.
It is.
So she was able to eat meat sauce on her pasta. She was now able to eat pudding and actual yogurt rather than these small Gerber, infant type custards. And she was drinking from a cup.
So this is 2 weeks. And
2 weeks.
So I know there's so much more that you did, but fast forward to today.
So Grace, I see Grace every maybe 2 or 3 weeks just as a monitor. More so, I think, for Mom, me, the school, just so we can keep Grace on track and make sure that we put any fires out before they start.
Right.
So Grace comes to me, and we, the last time she was here, we did chicken taquitos, frozen chicken taquitos. Right. She had 2 of those. She has had hamburger. She has had hot dogs.
Wow.
Grilled cheese. Anything we put in front of her now, she's apprehensive, like most kids would be when it's something new or novel. And then as soon as we do our program of going through the steps to getting her comfortable, she allows me to put it in, and then there's no more of me handling it. She does it herself. So
Amazing.
She's self-feeding.
And her health?
She has gained so much weight, which I want to just add that right now. I'm not responsible for the children once they start gaining weight. That's somebody else's profession to get that on. So,
right, but at least
she's gaining
healthy.
weight. She's healthy. She has beautiful skin. Her hair is growing. She just looks amazing.
Oh,
she's
wonderful.
a beautiful girl.
You have so many wonderful techniques. Would you share with us? I know we can't go through all that you did with Grace, but I love what you brought here.
Just a bunch of little simple things that I think the parents could, these are things you can do today.
Perfect.
I know that there's a lot of merchandise or items that you can get through specialty catalogs, things like that, which are great. I certainly use those tools, and I think they're necessary in order to be successful. However, I think that we also spend a lot of time on getting the correct tool when if we just use our
improvise.
Right. Use your household tools. Use things that are around your home that could be beneficial. Yes. Harmon, Walgreens, Walmart. You can find a million things in there that can help your children. For example, one of the things we use, this is a silicone straw. So if you feel it, you know that it's chewy, right? It's rubbery, right? So we use this frequently. Obviously children use it for drinking from a straw, but the way we use it is to get children to learn how to chew. So most frequently, they like to chew on inanimate objects. So when you give them a regular straw, you know that they don't get that same kind of feedback. They're looking for this bounce or this response from whatever it is that they're chewing. So with this, we will start them on just holding it and just becoming more accepting of the straw, getting them to bite on it, see what they can do with it. And then what we slowly do is we'll add food items in the actual straw, so they can understand how to get the crunch.
Food.
Right.
Look at that.
So you can put it in here, and small pieces will come out, and sometimes that poses an issue that we have to control. But other times, you can put it far enough back where they can just get that initial crunch so that their auditory system knows what crunching actually sounds like, and they don't get what's called hyperacusis. They're not afraid of what it sounds like. And then that's where we start to pair in this crunch, and they love doing it. So they'll keep going across, and we'll keep adding more. And so this is very simple. You can do anything that is a meltable solid. We don't suggest you putting in anything harder. The only other transition activity we would suggest is if they do have a problem where crunching or the sound effects of a crunch, we would suggest you putting in like fruit leather or fruit chew, just so they can get that sticky chew to it.
Got it. Great.
So,
well, we only have a few minutes left, so could you quickly show us a few of your favorite?
So one of the favorite things we love is using wristbands. This not only gives them, it gives them input to their hands for feeding. So if you want them to use utensils, this gives them sort of like
feels good
security, correct? So, and it also gives them sort of a boundary for picking up and moving their wrist.
Right.
But the other thing we use it for is children with autism are notorious for hand wiping, shirt wiping, pulling their shirt, and this is a way that we start to teach them how to wipe their mouth.
Oh, I love that. So simple and
so
right
simple.
there.
Yep. The next thing we have is for the younger kids. We know that feeding other people is a novelty. They can feed you, they'll feed anybody, they'll feed the animals, but the minute you ask them to feed themselves, it's an absolute no. So we found this on the market and we loved it because it's something simple. It's $3.99. It's in Walmart, Babies R Us, Amazon, whichever. And it is actually one of those snack keepers where you can put food in. So the way that we use it is we put it between his teeth and we have them feed, and then we have them feed themselves, or we have the monster feed them. So we'll put it in between the teeth, and then the monster's giving it back to them. So it's just a cute little activity for them. The other thing we do, which this is just a aha moment for a lot of people, is one of the reasons why children don't like to drink out of open cups is because they can't sustain it with their jaw. So we're notorious for giving them adult-like vessels for them to extract the liquid from. So we found that these tiny little disposable shot glasses from Hefty actually regulate the flow because you can't put much in it. So they're not worried about how much is coming towards their mouth, and they're able to stabilize without getting that biting on that thin plastic where they crack it. So these are a little bit more sustainable, so they're able to handle a bite. So this is how we teach some of the open cup strategies. And then we use
love those.
These are great. Okay, these are called My Fruity Faces. This was on Shark Tank. And the minute that it was on Shark Tank, I immediately called and ordered it because I thought they were adorable. So what they are, if you look, are little faces, and you actually peel the faces off, and you could put them on foods that perhaps the kids are afraid to touch or engage with.
So they can eat them.
Right, you can eat them. They're consumable. But you can put something on the plate and you can have them engage, because the first step with feeding is making sure they can engage or hold or interact with. So this is, we'll use these to help them.
And maybe this one, we have time for one more thing.
Sure. This is just a simple, I don't even know what you would call it. What do you call these? See, this is
grabber. I don't know.
Yeah,
I can think
tweezers. There you go. So these are just activity tweezers that we picked up at Lakeshore Learning. And what we actually do with this is when we have a lot of children who are tactily defensive and do not want to touch anything that's slimy, anything that has residue that gets on their hands. So we'll have them use this to have them engage with the food, whether it's putting it in something or putting it in their mouth or getting them to get it close to their lips. So we'll use just simple tweezers. I don't recommend you using the tweezers that you would use on your face, because those metal ones, they can get in and hurt and actually cause damage.
Well, this is wonderful. Thank you for sharing so many practical and simple things that we can use right now. And that's what one of my passions is sharing information so that people today can make an impact with their families. And they're going to you're making an impact with what you're doing. You really are, and I appreciate all that you do in New Jersey. And we didn't have time to go into how you're reaching people outside of this country, even around the world. But we're so grateful to everything you do, and we hope that more and more people will learn about you, especially through this show with the New Jersey Pediatric Feeding Associates. Right? I was thinking
it's a mouthful.
PFA.
Yes.
It is.
NJPFA, yes. So they can follow us on njpfa.com or on Facebook. We have about 15,000 followers all over the world who engage with us weekly, and they post some really interesting questions. So if they have time to look into that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Nancy.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you for joining us. It has been just a thrill to share Nancy and all of her amazing techniques and ideas and experience with you. And I'm so glad that she was here with us today. And I look forward to seeing you next time on Navigate Autism with Jane Lynn. I'm going to be starting a series soon talking about the real moms of autism. So kind of a behind-the-scenes peek at what really goes on in our lives so that you can understand a little bit more. It's less mysterious, but also relate to it if you are a parent or a mom with autism, that you can see you're not alone, we're here together. So thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.